The $197 million statement, how Taylor Swift revolutionized the music industry's approach to recognizing tour crews, an unprecedented moment in music history. The entertainment industry has witnessed countless record-breaking achievements throughout its storied history. But few moments have resonated as profoundly or challenged conventional business practices as dramatically as what unfolded during Taylor Swift's historic Eras Tour. When the tour concluded in December 2024 after nearly 2 years of performances, the world learned about an extraordinary act of generosity that would fundamentally reshape conversations about labor, profit distribution, and corporate responsibility in the entertainment sector. Over the course of 149 shows spanning 5 continents, Taylor Swift didn't just break attendance and revenue records, she demolished them entirely. The tour generated an unprecedented $2.077 billion in ticket sales alone, making it the first concert tour in history to surpass the $2 billion threshold. When merchandise sales, concessions, and ancillary revenue streams are factored into the equation, the total economic impact approached $2.5 billion, a figure that seems almost incomprehensible even by the inflated standards of modern entertainment economics. But the number that truly captured the world's attention wasn't the revenue figure. It was what Taylor Swift chose to do with a substantial portion of those earnings. In a decision that sent shockwaves through the music industry and beyond, she distributed $197 million in bonuses to the thousands of crew members, support staff, performers, and behind-the-scenes workers who made the tour possible. This wasn't a publicity stunt announced through press releases or social media campaigns. This was a genuine expression of gratitude, documented through raw, unfiltered footage that revealed the authentic human reactions to truly life-changing news. The scale of the Eras Tour, understanding the machine behind the magic. To fully appreciate the significance of Swift's bonus distribution, one must first understand the extraordinary scale and complexity of the Eras Tour itself. This wasn't simply a series of concerts. It was a logistical marvel that required military-level planning, execution, and coordination across multiple continents and time zones. Each Eras Tour show lasted approximately 3 hours and 15 minutes, during which Taylor Swift performed over 40 songs spanning her entire discography. The set list traveled through distinct eras of her musical career, each requiring complete costume changes, elaborate choreography, unique stage configurations, and specialized lighting and visual effects. The stage itself was a technical masterpiece, featuring multiple levels, hydraulic platforms, hidden trapdoors, LED screens spanning hundreds of feet, and pyrotechnic systems capable of creating spectacular visual displays while maintaining absolute safety standards. Behind every single performance stood an army of professionals whose expertise made the impossible appear effortless. The tour employed thousands of individuals across multiple categories of specialized labor. Dancers rehearsed for months to perfect intricate choreography that needed to appear fresh and spontaneous night after night. Musicians played live instruments with precision, adapting to acoustic variations in different venues while maintaining perfect synchronization with backing tracks and visual cues. Lighting technicians programmed and operated systems controlling thousands of individual lights, creating atmospheric effects that responded dynamically to each song's emotional arc. Sound engineers worked with stadium-specific acoustics to ensure that every audience member, whether seated at the front row or in the upper deck hundreds of feet away, experienced optimal audio quality. Stage managers coordinated dozens of simultaneous activities, ensuring that costume changes happened in seconds, props appeared exactly when needed, and performers hit their marks without hesitation. Riggers suspended equipment weighing tons above the stage, responsible for the safety of everyone below. Carpenters built and maintained complex set pieces that needed to be assembled and disassembled with clockwork regularity, but the logistical challenges extended far beyond what happened on stage. The tour's merchandise operation alone was a massive undertaking, with teams designing, manufacturing, transporting, displaying, and selling exclusive items that generated hundreds of millions of dollars in additional revenue. Catering crews fed hundreds of people daily, accommodating dietary restrictions and maintaining health standards across multiple jurisdictions with varying regulations. Security teams managed crowd control for audiences exceeding 70,000 people per show, coordinating with local law enforcement and emergency services while maintaining a welcoming atmosphere. Medical personnel, including doctors, nurses, and physical therapists, traveled with the tour to address injuries, illnesses, and the inevitable physical toll of performing or working at such intensity for months without substantial breaks. Wardrobe teams maintain hundreds of costumes, ensuring that each outfit appeared pristine despite being worn in high-energy performances under hot stage lights. Hair and makeup artists worked under extreme time pressure during quick changes, transforming performers' appearances to match different eras in mere minutes. Perhaps the most impressive logistical element was the transportation infrastructure. The Eras Tour required approximately 90 trucks dedicated solely to moving equipment, sets, and supplies between cities. These weren't ordinary delivery vehicles. They were massive semi-trucks carrying custom-built stage components, sophisticated electronic equipment, costume wardrobes, instruments, sound systems, lighting rigs, and countless other essential items. Each truck required skilled commercial drivers licensed to operate these enormous vehicles across international borders, navigating complex regulations, weather conditions, and tight scheduling demands. These drivers became the unsung heroes of the tour's mobility. While audiences enjoyed shows and then went home, truck drivers loaded equipment through the night, drove hundreds of miles to the next city, and unloaded everything so that construction crews could begin rebuilding the entire production from scratch. They slept during daylight hours in their truck cabs, sacrificed time with their families, and maintained grueling schedules for months on end. Their work was invisible to audiences, but absolutely essential to the tour's success. The standard industry practice. Why Swift's decision was revolutionary understanding. Why Taylor Swift's $197 million bonus distribution was so revolutionary requires examining standard practices in the entertainment touring industry. For decades, the economic model for major concert tours has followed a relatively predictable pattern that heavily favors artists and management while treating crew members as operational expenses rather than profit participants. In a typical major tour, crew members are hired as contractors or employees receiving predetermined salaries or hourly wages. These compensation packages are negotiated before the tour begins, based on industry standards for specific roles and experience levels. A lighting technician might earn a certain daily or weekly rate. A truck driver receives payment based on miles driven or days worked. Dancers sign contracts specifying per-show compensation. These arrangements provide income stability but contain no provisions for sharing in the tour's financial success. When a tour exceeds revenue expectations, when additional shows sell out, when merchandise flies off the shelves, when ticket demand allows for premium pricing, the additional profits typically flow exclusively to the artist, their management team, promoters, and venue operators. Crew members continue receiving their contracted rates regardless of whether the tour barely breaks even or generates hundreds of millions in profits. From a traditional business perspective, this makes logical sense. The crew agreed to their compensation terms upfront, and they receive payment as promised. The financial risks and rewards of touring belong to those who invested in the production. This model persists because it reflects broader patterns in how American capitalism typically structures employment relationships. Workers receive wages or salaries in exchange for their labor, while business owners and investors capture profits generated by that labor. Bonuses, when they exist at all in the touring industry, tend to be modest, perhaps a few $1,000s for crew members on particularly successful tours, often distributed as end-of-tour gifts rather than meaningful profit sharing. Moreover, touring crew positions, despite requiring specialized skills and involving demanding working conditions, have historically been treated as interchangeable labor. If one technician quits, another can be hired. If a driver leaves, another takes their place. This perception, whether accurate or not, diminishes leverage for workers seeking better compensation arrangements. The implicit message has been, if you want a share of the profits, become the artist, not the crew member. Taylor Swift's decision to distribute $197 million in bonuses representing nearly 10% of the tour's gross ticket revenue obliterated this traditional model. She didn't give token gifts or modest appreciation bonuses. She created a genuine profit-sharing structure that treated crew members as valued partners whose contributions directly enabled the tour's historic success. The percentage matters enormously. 10% of gross revenue isn't a rounding error or a charitable gesture. It's a substantial reallocation of wealth from the top to the middle and bottom of the organizational hierarchy. To put this in context, most corporations consider themselves generous if they distribute 5 to 10% of net profits, not gross revenue, to employees through bonus programs. And those distributions are typically heavily weighted towards senior executives and management. Taylor Swift essentially treated her tour crew like equity partners in a successful business venture, acknowledging that without their expertise, dedication, and sacrifice, the billion-dollar success wouldn't have been possible. The Disney Plus documentary, capturing raw human emotion. The true emotional power of this story remained largely private until Disney Plus released The End of an Era, a docuseries providing unprecedented behind-the-scenes access to the Eras Tour's final stages. Episode 2 of the series focuses specifically on what Taylor Swift called Bonus Day, offering viewers an intimate look at moments that were never intended for public consumption, but ultimately became some of the most powerful documentary footage in recent entertainment history. The footage begins with Swift herself sitting in what appears to be a quiet moment before meeting with crew members. She's not performing for cameras or delivering a prepared statement. Instead, she speaks with quiet intensity about why this matters so deeply to her. She explains that establishing a precedent with the Eras Tour represents one of her most important goals, beyond even the artistic and commercial achievements. Setting a precedent with the Eras Tour is really important to me, she says directly to the camera. Because people who work on the road, if the tour grosses more, they get more of a bonus. These people just work so hard, and they are the best at what they do. Her words carry weight precisely because they challenge the industry's default assumptions. She's not talking about charity or optional generosity. She's articulating a principle that financial success should be shared with those who created it. As the tour grew increasingly profitable, Swift didn't pocket the additional revenue. She increased the bonuses proportionally. This approach transformed the crew's relationship to the tour's success. Suddenly, every sold-out show didn't just benefit the star at the top, it benefited everyone involved. When ticket demand exceeded expectations, when merchandise sales surged, when the tour extended into additional cities and continents, crew members knew they would share in those gains. This created alignment between Swift's interests and her team's interests in a way that traditional employment arrangements cannot. But Swift added an element that transcended pure economics, personal recognition. Rather than simply authorizing bonus payments through payroll systems, she personally wrote handwritten notes to every single crew member. Given that thousands of people worked on the tour in various capacities across its 2-year span, this represented an enormous personal commitment. In the documentary, she acknowledges that writing all the notes took a couple of weeks of her time. Each note was personalized, reflecting Swift's awareness of individual contributions and sacrifices. The notes were placed in envelopes sealed with wax, a deliberately old-fashioned touch in an era of digital communication. This choice mattered. Wax seals evoke historical traditions of important correspondence, of documents worth preserving. The physical act of opening a wax-sealed envelope creates a moment of ceremony and significance that an email or direct deposit notification could never replicate. Swift explained in the documentary that either she personally delivered the notes and bonus checks, or her father, Scott Swift, handled deliveries when she couldn't be present. Again, this choice was deliberate. These weren't impersonal corporate communications distributed by human resources departments. These were personal thank you messages from someone who wanted to look people in the eye, shake their hands, and express genuine gratitude. The documentary's most powerful sequences capture the moments when crew members opened their envelopes and read their notes. The footage was shot after the European leg of the tour concluded in August 2024 at what must have been a gathering of crew members, likely expecting a standard thank you meeting. Taylor Swift addressed the group, visible emotion in her voice, acknowledging that the European leg had been the most challenging thing she'd ever done in her live performance career. She thanked them for their endurance, their positive energy, and the magic they helped create night after night in city after city. Then she told them to read their messages. What followed became the viral moment that captured the world's attention. Cameron Saunders, one of the dancers, began reading his note aloud. Swift had written about their journey together around the world, about dazzling crowds, about missing family. Then came the line with the dollar amount. In the broadcast version, the specific number was bleeped out for privacy, but the bleep lasted several seconds long enough to make clear that this wasn't a $1,000 or even $10,000 bonus. This was something far more substantial. The reactions were instantaneous and visceral. Gasps echoed through the room. Some people froze, seemingly unable to process what they'd just read. Others immediately broke down in tears. Crew members hugged each other, shared in collective shock and joy. One production assistant's voice can be heard saying, "Emma, pass out." Another person's hands visibly trembled as they held their envelope. These weren't professional actors delivering scripted responses. These were real people experiencing genuinely life-changing moments. The power of this footage lies in its authenticity. In an age of carefully curated social media presentations and manufactured reality television drama, watching real human beings receive news that fundamentally alters their financial futures carries enormous emotional weight. Viewers could see themselves in those reactions, could imagine what it would feel like to open an envelope expecting perhaps a nice bonus, and instead finding an amount that could pay off student loans, provide a down payment on a house, fund a child's education, or simply create financial security in an industry known for instability. The documentary also revealed that these bonus distributions happened multiple times throughout the tour, not just at the conclusion. The truck drivers, for instance, received their bonuses earlier in August 2023, after the U.S. leg of the tour wrapped in Santa Clara, California. At that point, they had been on the road for 24 consecutive weeks, living in their trucks, working overnight while the rest of the world slept. The Truck Drivers, a case study in valuing invisible labor among all the bonus recipients, the truck drivers' story particularly resonated with the public, perhaps because it highlighted how Swift's generosity extended to workers who never appear on stage, never interact with audiences, and typically remain completely invisible in discussions about concert tours. Approximately 50 truck drivers received $100,000 bonuses each, accounting for roughly $5 million of the total bonus pool. To appreciate why this mattered so profoundly, one must understand what truck driving for a major tour actually entails. These aren't local delivery drivers making runs across the city. These are long-haul commercial drivers operating massive semi-trucks loaded with extremely valuable, often fragile equipment, navigating across countries and sometimes across international borders. Their workday begins when everyone else's ends. After the final encore, after the last fan exits the stadium, after performers and visible crew members head to hotels, the truck drivers begin their shift. Equipment is carefully dismantled by riggers and stage crew, then loaded into designated trucks according to precise manifests, ensuring that everything needed for the next show arrives together. Loading can take most of the night, requiring careful arrangement to prevent damage during transport and facilitate efficient unloading on the other end. Once loaded, drivers hit the road, often covering hundreds of miles overnight to reach the next city in time for the load-in schedule. They navigate through varying weather conditions: rain, snow, fog, extreme heat, maintaining tight schedules that leave no room for significant delays. They cross state lines and international borders, managing different regulatory requirements, customs procedures, and documentation obligations. They find parking for enormous vehicles in urban areas not designed to accommodate them. They manage fatigue while maintaining absolute safety standards, knowing that any accident could injure themselves, damage irreplaceable equipment, or delay the tour's entire schedule. After arriving at the destination, they assist with or oversee unloading, ensuring that everything is accounted for and undamaged. Then, while the stadium comes alive with preparation for that night's show, the drivers catch whatever sleep they can manage, often in the sleeper cabs of their trucks or in budget hotels, during daylight hours when sleep is more difficult. By evening, as audiences arrive and the show begins, the drivers might get a few hours of relative rest before the cycle begins again. This lifestyle continues for months without substantial breaks. Drivers miss birthdays, anniversaries, children's school events, holidays with family. They eat irregular meals at truck stops and highway rest areas. They shower in truck stop facilities. They endure loneliness and disconnection from their normal lives. And they do all of this knowing that if they make a single serious mistake, a missed delivery deadline, a navigation error, an accident, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for them, but for hundreds of other workers depending on that equipment. The music industry has traditionally treated truck driving as a commodity service, outsourcing to logistics companies that provide drivers as needed. The drivers receive their hourly or per mile rates as agreed, and that's the extent of their compensation. No one considers giving them a share of ticket sales. No one factors their family sacrifices into financial calculations. They're invisible links in a supply chain, essential but unrecognized. Mike Schirkenbach, CEO of Shimotion, one of the trucking companies involved in the Eras Tour, spoke publicly about the impact of Swift's bonuses on his drivers. He described the moment when Scott Swift personally delivered the checks and handwritten notes to the driving team. According to Schirkenbach, the bonuses were genuinely life-changing, not hyperbolic marketing speak. She's giving a sum of money that is life-changing for these people, Schirkenbach explained in interviews. These men and women, they live on the road, they sleep during the day and work all night. It's a grueling task. They leave their families, young children for weeks. A lot of these drivers are not homeowners, and a lump sum like this gives you the ability to put a down payment on a home. That last detail deserves emphasis. According to Schirkenbach, many of the truck drivers were not homeowners before receiving their bonuses. Despite working full-time in skilled positions requiring commercial driver's licenses and specialized experience, they hadn't accumulated sufficient savings to make down payments on homes. The $100,000 bonuses suddenly made homeownership attainable, transforming rental families into property owners, creating equity that could be passed to future generations. This represents economic mobility in its most concrete form. Homeownership remains one of the primary mechanisms through which working-class Americans build wealth and achieve financial stability. For many of these drivers, Swift's bonus represented the difference between perpetual renting and owning a piece of property, between retiring with nothing and retiring with equity, between financial stress and financial security. The driver's story also highlighted a broader truth about modern employment, that salary alone often doesn't capture the full value of someone's contribution or the full cost of their sacrifice. A truck driver might earn $60,000 or $80,000 annually, reasonable compensation by many standards, but no amount of regular salary truly compensates for missing your child's first steps, or for spending your 25th wedding anniversary in a truck cab 1,000 miles from home, or for eating Thanksgiving dinner at a highway rest stop. These costs are real, and they're typically uncompensated in traditional employment arrangements. Taylor Swift acknowledged these hidden costs through her bonuses. She recognized that the tour's success came at tremendous personal expense to workers who sacrificed time with loved ones, who disrupted their normal lives, who endured physical and emotional hardship. The bonuses weren't just payments for labor performed, they were acknowledgments that the labor came with profound personal costs that deserve recognition and compensation. The dancers and performers, recognition beyond the spotlight. While truck drivers captured significant attention, the bonuses extended throughout the entire organizational structure, including roles that occupied more visible positions but still existed in Taylor Swift's shadow. The dancers, backup singers, and band members who appeared on stage every night received bonuses that, according to various reports and estimates, reached extraordinary levels. Some sources reported that dancers received approximately $750,000 each after the European leg of the tour. While exact figures remain unconfirmed and likely varied by role and tenure, even conservative estimates suggest that dancers received bonuses equivalent to several years of typical salary for their profession. This matters enormously because professional dancing, despite requiring years of training, extraordinary physical fitness, and rare talent, typically offers modest financial compensation. Most professional dancers work gig to gig, cobbling together income from various performances, teaching dance classes, and commercial work. Major tour opportunities represent significant breaks, but even backup dancer salaries for major artists usually range from $1,000 to $3,000 per show, good money for performance work, but not well-filled income. A typical tour might run for a few months, earning a dancer $50,000 to $150,000 total, after which they return to the hustle of finding the next opportunity. The Eras Tour dancers worked at an extraordinary intensity level, performing complex choreography in multiple costume changes across 3+ hour shows, night after night, for nearly 2 years. The physical demands alone were staggering. Dance at this level constitutes athletic performance requiring the same discipline, training, and physical conditioning as professional sports. Injuries are common, careers are short, and the competition is fierce. Most dancers never achieve financial security through their performance work alone. For these performers to receive bonuses potentially reaching 6 or 7 figures fundamentally alters their career trajectories. Such sums could allow dancers to purchase homes, invest for retirement, fund transition careers for when their bodies no longer permit professional dancing, or simply create financial cushions that allow them to be more selective about which jobs they accept in the future. The bonuses represented not just recognition for work performed, but investment in their futures. The documentary footage of Cameron Saunders reading his note captures this perfectly. Saunders is clearly an experienced professional performer who has likely worked numerous tours and high-profile gigs throughout his career. Yet when he reads the bonus amount in his envelope, he's visibly shocked. This wasn't something he expected, something that happens in his industry. His reaction, along with the reactions of fellow dancers visible in the footage, reveals that even those who appear on stage, who are photographed by thousands of fans, who seem to occupy privileged positions in the tour's hierarchy, typically do not share significantly in the tour's financial success. The musicians faced similar traditional constraints. Band members playing live instruments on the Eras tour brought exceptional skill to their roles. These weren't backing tracks or synthesized sounds. These were accomplished musicians performing complex arrangements with precision timing night after night. Yet, in typical touring arrangements, musicians receive per-show fees or tour contracts paying reasonable but not extraordinary wages. They're hired labor, not profit participants. By including all performers in the bonus structure, Taylor Swift acknowledged that their artistic contributions directly enabled the tour's success. The show worked because the dancing was spectacular, because the live music was tight and energetic, because backup vocals enhanced the sound, because every element came together in cohesive excellence. These weren't interchangeable parts that could be swapped out without consequence. These were specific, talented individuals whose work mattered. The broader crew, every role valued equally. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Swift's bonus distribution was its comprehensiveness. This wasn't a two-tiered system where visible performers received substantial bonuses while backstage crew got token gifts. The bonuses extended to every category of worker involved in the tour, explicitly recognizing that success required the seamless integration of countless specialized roles. Lighting designers and technicians who programmed and operated the sophisticated lighting systems received bonuses. Sound engineers who mixed audio night after night in different acoustic environments received bonuses. Riggers who hung equipment and ensured safety received bonuses. Carpenters who built and maintained sets received bonuses. Wardrobe teams who managed hundreds of costumes received bonuses. Hair and makeup artists who transformed performers between eras received bonuses. Security personnel who managed crowd control received bonuses. Catering teams who fed everyone received bonuses. Merchandise sellers who interacted with fans received bonuses. Stage managers, production assistants, pyrotechnic specialists, logistics coordinators, physical therapists, medical staff, instrument technicians, the list goes on. Every single role that contributed to the tour's functioning qualified for bonus compensation. This approach reflected a fundamentally different philosophy than typically governs large organizations. In most corporate structures, bonuses are hierarchical. Executive leadership receives the largest bonuses, reflecting their strategic decision-making authority and overall responsibility. Middle management receives smaller bonuses. Frontline workers receive the smallest bonuses or none at all. This structure supposedly reflects each person's contribution to the organization's success, with those making higher-level decisions deserving proportionally greater rewards. Taylor Swift's approach rejected this hierarchy in favor of a more egalitarian model. A truck driver received the same $100,000 as presumably other truck drivers, regardless of seniority or experience beyond the contracted terms. A lighting technician received a substantial bonus comparable to what others in technical roles received. The specific amounts varied by role and duration of involvement, but the philosophical approach treated every necessary function as equally valuable to the whole. This matters because it challenges fundamental assumptions about value and compensation in modern capitalism. Is a lighting designer's contribution to a concert tour worth less than a performer's contribution? From one perspective, yes, audiences pay to see the performer, not the lighting crew. The performer is irreplaceable in a way that specific crew members arguably aren't. From another perspective, though, the question itself is flawed. Without excellent lighting, the performance suffers. Without reliable equipment transportation, there is no performance. Every role is necessary and necessity should be valued. Taylor Swift's bonus structure embodied this latter philosophy. She recognized that the Eras Tour's record-breaking success resulted from comprehensive excellence across every operational dimension. Audiences attended because the overall experience was extraordinary, and that experience depended on countless details that most fans never consciously noticed, but would certainly notice if they were absent or substandard. The lighting needed to be perfect. The sound needed to be flawless. The stage needed to be safe and impressive. The costumes needed to be stunning. The merchandise needed to be available and appealing. Every element mattered, and every person enabling those elements deserved recognition. This comprehensive approach also sent a powerful message about dignity and respect in the workplace. When an organization treats some workers as unworthy of sharing in success, it implicitly designates them as less valuable, less important, less deserving of recognition. When an organization includes everyone in success sharing, it acknowledges everyone's human dignity and contributions. The psychological and cultural impact of this inclusion arguably matters as much as the financial impact. The personal touch, handwritten notes in a digital age, in an era defined by digital communication, automated systems, and scalable impersonal processes. Taylor Swift's decision to personally write thousands of handwritten notes stands out as a deliberate rejection of efficiency in favor of meaningful human connection. This choice deserves examination because it reveals something important about the nature of recognition and appreciation. Swift could have easily authorized the bonuses through payroll systems. She could have sent email messages or recorded video thank yous that could be viewed by everyone simultaneously. She could have held large group meetings where she thanked everyone collectively. These approaches would have been faster, easier, and more scalable. Instead, she chose the most labor-intensive option, individual handwritten notes to thousands of people. Writing thousands of personalized notes over a couple of weeks represents a significant time commitment for someone whose schedule includes performing, rehearsing, traveling, managing a business empire, maintaining personal relationships, and managing the countless demands on a global superstar's attention. The decision to allocate that time to writing notes signals that she considered this activity important enough to prioritize above other potential uses of her time. The content of the notes apparently wasn't generic either. Based on the example read by Cameron Saunders in the documentary, Swift referenced specific shared experiences, acknowledged individual sacrifices, and wrote with personal awareness of each recipient's role. This level of personalization requires actual thought and attention, not just signing pre-written cards. She had to think about each person, remember or research their contributions, and craft messages that would resonate personally. The physical format mattered too. Handwritten notes on paper, sealed in envelopes with wax seals, create tangible artifacts that recipients can keep, display, and treasure. Unlike digital messages that live in email archives or get deleted, these notes become keepsakes with lasting emotional value. Years from now, the crew members who receive these notes will still have them. Physical reminders of a time when their work was genuinely valued and recognized by someone they helped make extraordinarily successful. The wax seals add an additional layer of significance. Wax seals are associated with important historical documents, with formal correspondence, with occasions worthy of ceremony and permanence. They require intention and care to apply properly. They cannot be mass-produced in the way that printed cards can be. By sealing each envelope with wax, Swift transformed utilitarian communication into meaningful ceremony. The personal delivery of notes and bonuses further enhanced the experience. When Taylor Swift or her father Scott Swift personally handed someone an envelope, made eye contact, shook hands, and expressed thanks face-to-face, they created moments of genuine human connection that transcended the transactional nature of compensation. These were interpersonal moments of recognition, acknowledgement, and gratitude that no payroll system could replicate. This personal approach also modeled behavior that Swift explicitly stated she hopes becomes precedent in the industry. If other artists adopt profit sharing for their tours, they can process bonuses through accounting departments and consider the matter handled. But Swift demonstrated that financial compensation becomes far more meaningful when accompanied by genuine personal recognition. The combination of substantial money and heartfelt personal thanks creates a powerful message. You matter as a person, not just as a function. Your work is valued, not just your labor output. In organizational psychology research, recognition is repeatedly identified as one of the most powerful motivators for employee satisfaction and engagement, sometimes even more influential than compensation alone. People want to feel seen, appreciated, and valued for their contributions. They want to know that leadership understands and respects what they do. Swift's handwritten notes delivered this recognition in its most powerful form, combining financial reward with personal acknowledgement. The economic impact, transforming individual lives, while $197 million represents an enormous aggregate figure. Understanding its true impact requires examining how that money affected individual lives. The amounts received varied by role, duration of involvement, and other factors, but by all accounts, many recipients received sums that qualified as genuinely life-changing rather than merely nice bonuses. For truck drivers receiving $100,000, the impact was immediate and concrete. As Mike Schirkenbach noted, many were not previously homeowners. A $100,000 bonus after taxes might leave $60,000 to $70,000, depending on the recipient's tax situation and state of residence. In many American housing markets, particularly outside major coastal cities, $60,000 to $70,000 represents a sufficient down payment for a modest home. Suddenly, workers who had been renting for their entire adult lives could qualify for mortgages and become property owners. Home ownership matters far beyond just having a place to live. It represents wealth accumulation through equity, as mortgage payments build ownership stake rather than disappearing as rent. It provides stability and protection against displacement as rental markets tighten. It creates assets that can be passed to children or sold to fund retirement. For working-class Americans, homeownership remains the primary vehicle for wealth creation and economic advancement. Swift's bonuses facilitated this advancement for workers who might have otherwise remained perpetually locked out of the housing market. For others, the bonuses eliminated debt, student loan burdens, credit card balances, medical bills. Car loans, these forms of debt trap millions of Americans in cycles of paycheck-to-paycheck existence, where building savings becomes nearly impossible. A substantial bonus could eliminate these obligations entirely, freeing up future income for savings and investment rather than debt service. The psychological relief of becoming debt-free is difficult to overstate for people who have carried financial stress for years. For parents, the bonuses enable investments in children's futures. College savings accounts could be established or significantly funded. Childcare costs could be covered without stress. Extracurricular activities, educational programs, and opportunities that previously seemed financially out of reach suddenly became accessible. The intergenerational impact of these bonuses extends far beyond the immediate recipients. For workers approaching retirement age, the bonuses dramatically improve retirement security. Many people working in entertainment industry crew positions are independent contractors without traditional employer-provided retirement benefits. They're responsible for their own retirement savings, but when living paycheck to paycheck, retirement savings often gets perpetually deferred. A six-figure bonus could essentially constitute the retirement savings that someone in their 50s or 60s hadn't managed to accumulate through decades of working. For these individuals, Swift's generosity quite literally meant the difference between working until physical inability prevented it and actually retiring with dignity. For younger workers early in their careers, the bonuses created financial foundations that typically take years or decades to build. A dancer in their 20s receiving $750,000 suddenly possesses financial resources that could fund career transitions, support periods of artistic exploration, enable entrepreneurship, or simply provide security that allows for more selective and intentional career choices. Financial security in youth creates options and opportunities that perpetual financial stress forecloses. The economic impact also extended to local communities. When crew members spent their bonuses on homes, cars, investments, and major purchases, that money circulated through local economies, supporting other businesses and workers. When they paid off debts, financial institutions realized returns that could be deployed elsewhere in the economy. When they established savings accounts and investment portfolios, that capital became available for business loans and other productive economic uses. The $197 million didn't simply transfer from Swift to her crew. It rippled through the broader economy in ways that created additional value and opportunity. Moreover, the bonuses improve long-term financial literacy and planning for many recipients. People who suddenly receive substantial lump sums often seek financial advice, learn about investment options, and begin engaging with financial planning in ways they hadn't previously. This education creates lasting benefits beyond the immediate cash value of the bonuses. Industry reactions and the call for systemic change. The revelation of Taylor Swift's bonus distribution sparked immediate and intense discussion throughout the music industry and beyond about labor practices, profit distribution, and the ethics of wealth concentration in entertainment. Reactions range from effusive praise to defensive pushback, but few observers could ignore the implicit challenge Swift posed to her peers and to industry standard practices. Many crew members and industry workers use social media platforms to express gratitude not just for Swift's generosity, but for the visibility her actions brought to their typically invisible labor. Countless posts appeared highlighting the demanding nature of touring work, the family sacrifices involved, and the typically modest compensation relative to the revenues generated by major tours. Swift had essentially validated their experiences and contributions in a way that the industry as a whole had rarely done. Labor organizations and unions in the entertainment sector pointed to Swift's bonuses as evidence of what's possible when artists and producers choose to share success more equitably. Some called for contractual provisions requiring profit sharing for touring crews, arguing that Swift had demonstrated the financial feasibility of such arrangements. If an artist can distribute 10% of gross revenue to workers and still profit enormously, why shouldn't this become industry standard practice? Other artists faced immediate scrutiny and implicit pressure. If Taylor Swift could afford to give $197 million in bonuses, what about other musicians conducting highly profitable tours? Beyoncé's Renaissance World Tour, while not reaching Eras Tour revenue levels, was immensely profitable. Did her crew receive comparable treatment? What about tours by Drake, Coldplay, the Rolling Stones, or any number of other artists, generating hundreds of millions in revenue? The questions were implicit but clear. If Swift set this precedent, would others follow, or would her generosity remain an exceptional anomaly? Some industry insiders offered defenses of traditional compensation models. They argued that touring involves enormous upfront costs and financial risks that justify artists retaining the bulk of profits. They pointed out that crew members agree to their compensation terms before tours begin and receive payment as contracted. They suggested that Swift's financial position as both performer and primary rights holder for her music, with minimal debt and complete creative control, was unusually favorable and couldn't be replicated by most artists. These defenses contain elements of truth but also reveal resistance to change. Yes, touring involves substantial risks and costs. Yes, contractual agreements are binding. But none of these facts prevent artists from choosing to share profits as Swift did. The question isn't whether artists are legally obligated to distribute bonuses. The question is whether they should feel morally and ethically compelled to do so when their tours generate extraordinary profits enabled by countless workers' labor and sacrifice. The conversation also highlighted broader questions about economic inequality in American society. The entertainment industry functions as a highly visible microcosm of wealth concentration dynamics affecting the entire economy. In sector after sector, productivity gains and profit growth over recent decades have flowed predominantly to executives, investors, and top earners, while compensation for typical workers has stagnated relative to inflation and productivity. Swift's bonuses offered a counterexample, a situation where success was genuinely shared rather than hoarded at the top. Some commentators connected Swift's actions to growing labor militancy in the United States. The past few years have seen waves of strikes and unionization efforts across industries, from auto workers to healthcare providers to Starbucks baristas, driven by workers' frustration with being excluded from the financial gains generated by their labor. Swift's voluntary profit sharing represented the kind of outcome that labor activists seek through collective action, fair distribution of wealth to those who created it. Business publications and economists examine the potential economic efficiency of Swift's approach. Some argued that profit sharing creates better alignment of incentives and improves worker motivation, productivity, and retention. When crew members know that the tour's success directly benefits them financially, they may work more effectively, innovate more readily, and commit more fully to excellence. This perspective suggests that profit sharing isn't just ethical, but also economically rational, potentially generating returns that offset the immediate costs of bonuses through improved performance. Others question whether Swift's model could scale effectively. The Eras Tour was uniquely profitable, allowing for extraordinary generosity. Most tours operate on much tighter margins, where distributing 10% of gross revenue to crew bonuses might erase profitability entirely. This is a legitimate concern, but it perhaps misses the underlying principle. The specific percentage might vary based on each tour's economics, but the fundamental idea that extraordinary success should be shared with those who enabled it applies regardless of scale. Some industry veterans expressed skepticism that Swift's precedent would lead to systemic change. They noted that entertainment has always had exceptional cases of generosity or unique compensation arrangements that didn't fundamentally alter standard practices. They predicted that most artists would continue operating under traditional models, treating Swift's approach as admirable but exceptional rather than replicable. This skepticism may prove accurate, but it also underestimates the power of public awareness and cultural expectations. Now that millions of people know that profit sharing on this scale is possible, future tours by major artists will inevitably face questions about whether they're treating crews fairly. Artists known for progressive politics or social consciousness will face particular pressure to align their business practices with their stated values. While this pressure may not force immediate widespread change, it creates cultural conditions where change becomes more likely over time. The precedent and future implications. Taylor Swift explicitly stated in the documentary that setting a precedent was among her most important goals for the Eras Tour. Understanding what precedent actually means in this context requires examining both legal and cultural dimensions of how business practices evolve. From a legal standpoint, Swift's bonuses don't create binding obligations on anyone else. Employment law allows employers and contractors to structure compensation arrangements as they see fit within legal boundaries. No artist is required to match Swift's generosity or adopt her profit-sharing model. Precedent in the legal sense requires judicial decisions or regulatory changes creating enforceable standards, neither of which resulted from Swift's voluntary actions. However, precedent in a cultural sense functions differently. When a highly visible leader in an industry demonstrates that alternative practices are feasible and beneficial, it shifts perceptions of what's possible and appropriate. It creates reference points for future negotiations and discussions. Crew members and their representatives can now point to Swift's model as evidence that substantial profit sharing is economically viable, making it harder for artists or management to claim that such arrangements are impossible or financially irresponsible. Precedent also operates through public perception and reputation management. In an era where social consciousness and ethical business practices increasingly influence public opinion, artists face growing pressure to demonstrate that their success aligns with their values. For artists who position themselves as progressive, as advocates for working people, or as socially conscious entrepreneurs, failing to provide fair compensation and profit sharing could create reputation problems and accusations of hypocrisy. Swift's highly publicized generosity raises the bar for what constitutes fair treatment of touring crews. The precedent may manifest most powerfully in contract negotiations. Crew members and their unions now had ammunition for arguing that compensation structures should include profit-sharing provisions. They can point to Swift's tour as proof of concept that such arrangements work effectively. While they can't force artists to accept these terms, they can make the conversation part of standard negotiations, gradually normalizing the expectation that successful tours should benefit everyone involved, not just those at the top. The precedent extends beyond touring to other areas of entertainment and creative industries. Film and television production involves similar hierarchies where stars and executives, Kay Water,